All right, welcome back. Well, as we've been telling you, for the next, I suppose, hour and 20 minutes that Morning Live is on air, we're going to be talking about education. What are the milestones and where are the challenges? This comes at the backdrop of the findings of a report by Equal Education after conducting a school's social audit on schools here in the province of Gauteng. The audit was conducted on 200,000 students in more than 200 schools in over 20 communities around Gauteng. So it really did cover a large part of the province. It covers learning conditions, also identifies other challenges like overcrowding, lack of libraries and labs, as well as a shortage of desks and chairs. It also highlighted that about 10% of township schools are experiencing what they call a sanitation crisis. Well, in studio with us to discuss these matters, we've invited Edward Mosuwe, who is the Deputy Director General for Curriculum Management in the Department of Education in Gauteng. We also have Tsepo Motsepe from Equal Education to talk to us about the survey. And we also welcome Teliso Ledimo, who is SATU's Provincial Secretary here in Gauteng. Thank you, all of you, for being with us, and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning.
All right, so I suppose the best place to start would be to unpack more of this survey and some of the findings, some of, I suppose, what one could call startling findings. Talk to us about those from Equal Education side.
Well, Leon, this survey was conducted by Equal Education together with a number of community organizations, such as your Sanko in Sidibeng, your Buafunda in the Orange Farm, your Alex Civic Organization. We had an organization in Orlando as well, in Soweto. And some of the findings, I mean, one would assume that would actually say they're not new. These are not new findings, in a sense that we know that there's issues of overcrowding in our classrooms. But for a province like Gauteng, one of the biggest challenges we've had as Equal Education since 2013 was the dire conditions of sanitation for our learners, particularly in our township schools, where 100 boys or girls would share a toilet, where in most cases we will not have water in our schools, to the point where in some instances for girls would report staying away from schools because when it's that time of the month, they will then decide not to go to school because lack of infrastructure still remains a challenge. We've had issues of boys and girls sharing toilets in some of our schools, and these are some of the things which when our members speak about, they say, well, it makes it difficult for one to have a sense of privacy, for one to go to the bathroom without having to ask one of your friends to accompany you. So those are some of the findings.
Okay, just as a matter of fact, which were some of the schools that were actually surveyed? What schools are we talking about?
We're talking about schools in Guatemala, Davidson, Tembisa, Orange Farm, The Val, Alex, Pretoria West. We're talking about schools in Orlando, Soweto. We're talking about schools in the far West Rand as we go towards Kagiso. The majority of them being township schools.
If I'm not mistaken, the organization Equal Education says that the MEC, Panyaza Lesufi, has accepted the findings.
He has accepted the findings unconditionally, because that is the reality. This was not reality. This is the reality in most township schools in the province. All
right, so let's talk about the way forward now. So we've heard some of the findings, some startling findings. I mean, 100 pupils sharing one toilet, which one can only imagine is not even working properly, if it is working at all. No toilet rolls, no soap, no anything to try and give these children at least the benefit of good sanitation at school. Let's not even get to the education side of things. What's going to be done about all of this?
No, thank you very much, Leanne, for an opportunity. Indeed, the MEC for Education in Gauteng has continued to say sanitation is dignity.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that he's continued and gone on public record to indicate. In this regard, I should also indicate that the department had also done, ahead of the Equal Education report, there had been an independent assessment that had been done when MEC took office early last year. In that regard, that report had indicated that there were 576 schools that were assessed through the master plan process on sanitation. And we found that of the 576 schools that we picked up, there were 41 schools that had their toilets in bad state. And there were about 166 that were in a and maybe let me say 40 that were in a bad state that they had to be closed.
Yeah.
And therefore we had to provide alternative means as we deal with that particular problem. We also were aware of 166 that were dysfunctional. And the numerous factors that we had identified that caused the challenges that had been noted. One of those elements has been a lack of water in specific areas, broken boreholes, but also there would have, you might understand that in some instances where schools would have been provided with sanitation, there would have been elements where the infrastructure would have been vandalized, and there has been therefore a mixture of challenges that we identified, which corroborated in part the findings that Equal Education had made. But the question then is, what is it that we then had to do? The MEC has gone on record to indicate, in fact, 176 million rands was already put aside, which allocation was intended to actually do repairs immediately in those specific areas of schools. What MEC has further gone on to say, he's already given, after the report from Equal Education has also been released in addition,
yeah.
he has dedicated that this coming June holidays, by June holidays, all of the bad schools where there is bad sanitations, we would be getting all of engineers and artisans to be in those schools to ensure that those could be brought back. And I think it's all in the spirit of saying sanitation is dignity, and we therefore have to ensure that at all times that we provide. But I think an important aspect that we have to give as well here, Leanne, is that once there has been repairs to those facilities, it will be the extent to which we then protect them and ensure that they are not vandalized, so that they would then be in a continued state of usage. And I think it is in that context. And an important element that I should also say, you might know that Gauteng as a province has also had a whole lot of inward migration as for people coming into the province,
yeah.
And that on its own has also put a burden on the current infrastructure that there is. And I think you would understand that on a continual basis, infrastructure development is an area that we're looking at. However, we may not necessarily be moving at a pace, but there is movement in that particular regard.
Okay, Satu, I haven't forgotten about you, because I'm going to come to you now for your response on everything that's being said here. But I, before we take this break, the one question that really needs to be asked is, why has it taken so long? I mean, why does it take a report such as what comes from Equal Education and yourselves doing an investigation as well, that we sit in this year of 2015 and our children are learning and going to school in such an undignified manner? I mean, surely this is part and parcel of looking at schools in a province. This is what you do. It is your job. Why is it not being done, and why does it take this long to actually improve things?
Well, I think you could argue on the one aspect that at different levels of the system we have people that are responsible for all of these particular matters. At the side of the school, we would expect that the principal and the teachers at the school would be able to report and elevate. And at the side of the district, the same matter would apply. And it would have taken the different reports that would have been provided, therefore, to continue to to get the department to respond. I should indicate, Leanne, that in fact I had seen this, that in specific areas where the department would have gone to repair, you then found that there was an instance where after a repair had been done, 2 weeks down the line, you go back, you find that there'd been an element of vandalism. So I think we also need at some point to have a balance between what would have been done in terms of repairs and how then the system would, and the communities and the school community and the neighboring communities would also be able to take and protect the investment that would have been made in that particular regard. I accept that there could be instances where the level and the extent to which we may have developed on infrastructure may not have kept pace, but I do know that there've always been plans to provide for that level of support.
Okay, let's take a quick break here, and when we return I want to get the perspective from the teachers, because at the end of the day, when you hear that repairs are being done, things are being fixed, you go back 2 weeks later and everything is in disrepair. Whose responsibility is this? The parents, the scholars, the teachers? Well, let's find out from Satu what their reaction is. Stay tuned.